The Joe Rogan Experience.
It's important, I can't help talking about the death penalty when we talk about Shorty Clemente, because in this country, a lot of people still believe in the death penalty, and I don't. And what I say to people who believe in the death penalty is, I respect your view, but what percentage of innocent people are you okay with executing, right? Because the system is fundamentally flawed. And even if the system was reformed in all the ways that we could sit here and think of, right, and I have some ideas on that, there's still going to be errors. There are always going to be errors made. And so you have to accept that there are going to be mistakes. We know that, like in Florida, where Josh represents James Daly, and again, we did a podcast episode about his case as well. James is either going to be the 100th guy executed by the state of Florida or the 30th guy exonerated from death row.
Yeah, Clemente was the 29th, and I'm representing who should be the 30th.
So they're not, even if all the people they executed were guilty, and we know they weren't, right? We know certain people like Jesse Tefero, who was absolutely innocent, executed by the state of Florida in that gruesome execution where the electric chair, quote unquote, malfunctioned and his head caught on fire, and they had to electrocute him 3 times. But even if they got those right, they aren't even batting 700, right? Ugh. And then in Louisiana, to your point before, Joe, a guy named John Thompson, rest in peace, was a good friend of mine. He came within a month of being executed by the state of Louisiana when an attorney, investigator, was staring into a microscope and saw the DNA evidence that proved that he was not guilty of this murder, and he was ultimately exonerated. And he wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times where he said, I don't understand why the prosecutor who prosecuted, because he proved that they knew he was innocent before they prosecuted him, right? He knew it, and it was absolutely proven. That was not in question. So he said, I don't understand why that prosecutor is not being charged with attempted murder. They tried to kill me, and they knew I was innocent, and I've proven that. But
and what happens to the prosecutor? Nothing. I've been saying this for a long time, that there's a real problem with human beings when it comes to anything where there's a game. And the problem with policing and prosecuting people and convicting people, and it's a game, and meaning that there's winners and losers. And when there's winners and losers, people cheat. There's a lot of people with poor character, and they just want to win, and they get caught up in this game. I mean, you can call it a game, you can call it a pursuit, whatever you want to call it. There's an end that you want to achieve if you're successful, and if you don't achieve that end, you are unsuccessful. So when people are trying to achieve this end, they will do all kinds of things. And it's just inherently a part of human beings that are weak. People of weak character, people that are morally flawed, they do things like that. They'll know they're wrong, and they do it anyway. They know that someone is innocent, and they pursue it anyway because they want that W. It's a real problem with people. I've seen it we've all seen it playing games with people. Kids do it. Adults do it. Like when you see a grown adult cheating at cards, like just a game of cards, it's an embarrassing thing. Like, who are you? Like you really
you
care?
Hit it on the head so much.
But that's it, right? It's a game.
Listen, it is so. Even in the prosecutor in Clemente's case, this is not some one-off circumstance. Joe, you could not have articulated it better. I mean, it is. You ever been in an argument with someone, and it's like. With my wife, sometimes she'll be like, no, you left the keys here. And I'll be like, no, I know I gave them back to you. And then as you're in the argument, you remember, you know what, she's right.
Right.
But then, and you have a decision to make. Am I going to be the bigger person and say I fucked up? Or am I going to continue down this course?
Right.
Unfortunately, and I think Joe, hit on the fundamental the psychology is almost like, you're right. It's so binary. It's either win or lose.
Yes.
And I was begging, I'm an emotional dude. I'm mushy. And I had to weep to this prosecutor in Clemente's case. I had the real murderer on the stand, and my first question to her was, how many times have you threatened to murder someone? Watch how dug in they get. She said, never. I had a dash cam video of her saying to a cop, blasting her head against the partition, I'm going to fucking murder you, you motherfucker. So I played the video for her, and I said, what about that? She said, oh, I didn't listen. I didn't watch. I said, that was you. That was your voice, right? And, I got her, and then she says, well, I black out. I say things and do things, and I black out and block them out. I finally got her to admit, I said, isn't it true that you may have murdered your mother and your grandmother and blocked it out? And she said, yes. And I had to sit in a room with this prosecutor. And I don't know if it was just like, an angry cry, because I'm angry that he won't just say, I fucked up here. We fucked up and we got the wrong person. And I'm weeping to him saying, can't you just admit that you made a mistake? And you're right. It is that I have seen it so many times with prosecutors. It's all about getting the W. And they just won't admit that they're wrong. And I think that there's something deeper about human psychology working there where the powers that be won't admit. I mean, I hate to say it, but Kamala Harris was no different here in California.
Right.
I mean, she fiercely defended, wrongful convictions. Why? I mean, this isn't like made up. There's like a huge investigative piece in the New York Times about it. It's not something that's germane to Florida. It's in California. It's in New York. And God forbid you're in the South, and it's a real problem, and I don't know how to solve it.
It's not like they're going to completely overhaul the system and stop the whole the way it's set up now with a judge and prosecutors and attorneys, and they're not going to change it. I mean, the system is in place. There's too many cases, right? There's constantly they're constantly hearing new cases. To completely overhaul and change this method of policing and convicting people, it would require a massive undertaking.
And that's why we're so appreciative that you give us this forum, because there are so many amazing people that, it really literally takes being in the bowels, if you will, of the system and getting it beneath your fingernails and standing up to and speaking truth to power.
It's got to be terrifying to be there, too, to know that someone is willing to convict someone that they know is innocent because they want to win.
And there's so many factors that go into wrongful convictions, Joe. We see them again and again. Tunnel vision is one, right? They lock in on you. They decide you're the guy. And then more new evidence comes in and says he did it.
Right.
They don't want to hear it.
Right.
They just, it's a psychological thing. It's also blind ambition. And there's so many factors that I think some of them are preventable. And when we set out to do these podcasts, whether it's the Wrongful Conviction one or Junk Science that Josh is the host of that just came out, or even the False Confession series that we did, our goal is to educate the public, because your listeners are going to, you and me, everyone, Jamie over here, the engineer, is going to end up on a jury at some point, right? And you may be holding somebody's life in your hands. And it's important for you to understand that the people that you hope that are going to be telling you the truth, that you respect because they're authority figures, right? I grew up respecting uniforms and everything else, and I still do. But the fact is, they may not be telling the truth. And just because somebody says they're an expert, that's what Josh talks about on his podcast, doesn't mean they're really an expert. They may be talking about things that are actually junk science. And furthermore, they're allowed to lie in the interrogation room. And this is something, if we get nothing else across today, I always tell people when I do talks and on my show, I talk about the fact that if you get picked up and brought in for questioning, and, people who are innocent waive their Miranda rights. 85% of people waive their Miranda rights anyway. But people who are innocent almost always do because they don't think they have anything to hide. They think, I'll just go in. I'll tell them like I wasn't there or I was with my mom or whatever it was, and I'd go home. And they may not say that you're a suspect at all. They may say, we just want to ask you a few questions. So the answer is, if that happens to you, the only thing you should say is, I'm Joe Rogan and I want a lawyer. Or whatever your name is, whoever's listening, those are the only words you should say, because they're not your friends. And you can get talked in that interrogation room. Crazy shit happens. They don't always beat people up. They don't need to. They can use coercive psychological tactics that can get people to confess to crimes that they didn't commit. And once you start talking and you're in that little airless room, we've seen it on TV, right? And they start the good cop, bad cop, and they intimidate you and they threaten you with the death penalty, and they're allowed to lie.
Now, why are they allowed to lie?
That's a great question, Joe. I mean, in other Western countries, they're not, but here they are. So they can sit there, especially, and the people that are most likely to falsely confess are people, adolescents, right? Anyone whose brain is not fully formed, and we know that your brain's not fully formed till you're 25. and military veterans, interestingly enough. And they're disproportionately affected by this because they're used to obeying authority figures, right, and following orders. And so the Norfolk Four, a classic case of that, for 4 guys confessed to a crime they didn't commit. And none of them did it. And the
Central Park 5 is another good example.
Right, those were just kids. They were just young teenage kids. And, they can sit there and they can threaten you with the death. And they can sit there and go, Joe, listen, we got your buddy in the next room. He's not even there. And he says he saw you do it. We got your fingerprints on the knife, Joe. What are you talking about? The best thing for you is to confess.
And Joe asked the critical question, which is why are they allowed to do it? Because there's not a law. No one has the balls. All these blowhard politicians have the balls to introduce, because, they're afraid to piss off the police union because they'll lose that vote, right? To introduce legislation.
God damn it, the police union should be the ones who are clamoring for
that. Right, that introduce legislation.
Especially now, right?
Introduce legislation, right, especially now. Introduce legislation that makes it a crime, right, to lie to a suspect. Think about the mind fuck that's going on here. And remember, the psychology is we're going to deprive you of sleep, we're going to deprive you of food, we're going to scare the living shit out of you, and we're going to lie to you. We're going to lie to you and make you – you ever see that Chris Rock bit where he's like, cop pulled me over, and after a while I'm like, damn, maybe I fucking did do it. You know? Yeah. It's like that shit is going on. And it's like, you're like, maybe I did something and didn't remember it. That's what they start getting you to believe, because if they're telling me – they're saying, Joe, listen, we have – how the fuck do you explain how your DNA is on the victim? How do you explain that? And you're thinking to yourself, I can't fucking explain that. I didn't do it, but maybe I don't know. Maybe I did something and don't remember it. And then there's this, which is you'll hear from a lot of people that are victims of coercive interrogations is I figured I would just tell them what they wanted to hear, get out of the room, and then sort it out.
Right.
Right. And they'll say to you, listen, you're just a kid. No one's going to believe that you committed this gruesome murder, right? You just got to – my partner's crazy. I don't know what he's going to do to you. But while he's out of the room, let me tell you, kid, the best thing for you to do is just sign the piece of paper and, we'll sort this out later. You'll be fine. But now you've just signed your own death warrant because juries can't understand. When you ask people, would you ever confess to a crime you didn't commit? You'll ask the first 100 people you see, they'll all say, no, I'm smart. I would never do that. But the thing is, they don't realize 25% of the DNA exonerations, approximately 25%, Joe, involve false confessions. So just process that, right? That's how many people confessed because
they're good at it.
And some of them are
that's right. The cops are great at it.
Some of them may be mentally challenged, right? The cops
and it's also a game. It's a game to get you.
That's a game.
It's the same kind of game. It's a game to get you to confess.
And it goes on even after the conviction has been overturned, like in Clementi's case, like in my own adopted daughter Nora Jackson's case, where the Tennessee Supreme Court unanimously overturned her conviction for murdering her own mother. And in their ruling, they excoriated the prosecutors for having played so loose with the rules, right, to say the least. And yet they came back in and said, "Listen, we're going to try you again unless you take a plea."
Jesus Christ.
And most people say to me, "Well, what they can't try you again for the same thing," but they can because the higher court, when they overturn your conviction, the indictment still stands, the original indictment. And most prosecutors will say, "Well, you know what? It's a long time ago, and we've been proven wrong, and we're going to let it go." But if they really are vindictive, they may say, "You know what? I want to protect this conviction at all." And let's not forget that every time we convict an innocent person, the real perpetrator remains free. Right. And that even if you're someone who maybe is, pretty hardcore on law and order, whatever, a lot of your listeners come from different, walks of life, different viewpoints, but everybody can agree that we want the person, especially these vicious, violent crimes, these brutal crimes, we should all want the real perpetrator off the street and not for the convenient target to just get, manhandled and brutalized by the system. And then that other perpetrator oftentimes goes on to commit more terrible crimes and creates more innocent victims.